Great, thank you. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pelaez. I am your City Councilman for District 8, and welcome to a delicate conversation and sometimes a difficult conversation about homelessness and what San Antonio is facing and what we're doing about it, and what it is we'd like for you guys to know. This is going to be a conversation between myself and 3 local subject matter experts. And I'm going to, before I introduce you to them, I want you to know that many of you have already sent in questions. We've been going through your questions and trying to put them in order to make sure that we have a, that we're going to get to them thematically, right? And then we're also going to take questions live as they come in. I will tell you that depending on the number of questions we get, or if there's some repetitive questions, we may not get to yours, but that doesn't mean that your question's not important. And if anything goes wrong, please blame the moderator, okay? Like I told our speakers earlier, something always goes wrong when your show is live, but we're going to roll with the punches. So allow me to introduce you to 3 friends. And in no particular order, I'll start with Officer Cokerham, one of our SAPD officers at the Prue station. Officer, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Wonderful, thank you. And then I'm gonna do what a moderator shouldn't do, and I'm gonna let these folks introduce themselves to you. Patrick Steck with the City of San Antonio. Patrick, what's your title and what do you do there, and why the heck are you on my town hall?
Well, thanks for having me. Patrick Steck. I'm the Assistant Director in the city's Department of Human Services. The Homeless Services Division, which Trez is part of, and he'll himself and what he does. I also oversee the Family Assistance Division, which is several different programs and services we offer. The VITA Income Tax Prep Program or Utility Bill Assistance Program, some things like that, and then a benefits navigating that I'll talk to you guys a little bit later in the program about as well.
All right. So basically, you're the pointy end of the stick on homelessness issues at the City of San Antonio. That about right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. Now, Trez, Scipio. You and I, have not had too many opportunities to be with each other, but every single time you and I are together, man, I learn a lot, and I just thank God. You really are one of the angels among us. Tell me who you are and what role are you playing these days in homelessness?
Okay, my pleasure. My name is Trez Scipio. I am a worker for the City of San Antonio, DHS, part of the Homeless Outreach Connection Team. And my purpose here, well, a little about myself. I served 26 years in the Navy. Once I retired, my wife and I decided to move to San Antonio, which has definitely not been a problematic decision. We love it. We're having the times of our lives. Went to Our Lady of the Lake University, where I completed my bachelor's in social work and then completed my master's in social work. After that, last year, actually earlier this year, I received my license in social work. So I'm a licensed master's in social work, or LMSW. I've been working with the City of San Antonio originally in January, where I worked with the San Fernando Hub, where we provided resources and information for some of the downtown people experiencing homelessness. After being hired on by the city for the homeless outreach team in 1st of January, I've been blessed to be on this wonderful team with some wonderful people, amazing leadership, and just amazing colleagues. And we're here to provide resources and supplies, support, anything we can for our neighbors and our clients.
Yeah. Y'all, Trez is, I've described him as walking, talking compassion. It's one of the reasons that he's out there in the field touching these people in meaningful ways and trying to get them from falling further down into the cracks. And so let's start with our friend the officer. Why don't you tell us what are some of the most frequent calls your department gets when it comes to homelessness, and how is it you guys respond, and how is it these folks may lean on you from time to time as far as getting help?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Pelaez. In the SAFFE unit, so we are separate and distinct from patrol. We have the opportunity to start to build relationships with these homeless. Many of the calls we get are repetitive in nature. So you see the panhandling calls, you see the homeless camp calls, the loitering in front of businesses. And each of those has their own distinct way of being solved, let alone the specific situations of each, because each is their own person. They handle things differently. You have anything from individuals dealing with narcotics addictions, as well as some mental health problems on board as well. So that determines a lot of how we respond as patrol officers and as police officers to these individuals.
I'm going to go off script a little bit here because I typed up a few questions, but something struck me today. You and I had lunch today, officer, you and me and all of the officers in the SAFFE unit. And we took lunch over there, and really great way to spend some time with each other and get to know you guys. But folks, I saw something striking. Before they all had lunch, Officer Sam Esparza said, "Everybody gather around, we're going to say a prayer." And his prayer was, thank you for lunch, thank you for the food, thank you for the brothers and sisters around us, God, please keep us safe, etc. But you guys ended it with a very profound comment. And one of those was, please help us be compassionate, respectful, and give dignity to our community as we're out there. And all of you nodded yes, and everybody said amen. Does that compassion and that respect and that dignity, how does that manifest itself when you guys are dealing with these homeless men and women out there?
I would say that interaction is determining of every interaction we have.
Okay.
So with every individual that we come in contact with, we want to be respectful. We want to be kind. We want to, in many ways, represent the best of San Antonio and the diversity that comes with living in such a large area. In these calls, we're dealing with people that in many ways are at the very lowest of their lives. So if you come to this, if you come to them in these situations, looking down upon them, there will be no bridging of any community outreach. They're not going to want to come to you for these resources that we have very many of, whether that's housing, whether that's homeless services, whether that's getting them a job or a good identification. They're not going to trust you if they feel like you're coming to this with a predisposition of being judgmental, better than them. So that compassion goes farther than, honestly, many of the hundreds of interactions we have every day.
So, every conversation you have with these men and women must be a difficult conversation to some extent, right? And Trez, you're hearing this, and how is it that this concept of compassion and dignity and respect play out in your day-to-day dealings with the men and women that you come across on the streets?
For myself and my colleagues, compassion is probably the key role that we emphasize. On my way to work every day, my prayer is that, Lord, help me to help at least 3 people. I used to say, let me help someone, but now I've started naming and claiming. I want specifically to impact the lives of at least 3 people that I come into contact with. And as the officer had shared, the only way to do that is as a social worker to meet a person where they are. But as a human, to allow that element of compassion, to emphasize dignity and worth of that person, those are essential tools. And of course, it's with a partnership with so many resources, so many organizations, with our with the SAFE team, with so many things, reaching out into the community. It's essential to make sure that compassion is at the forefront of everything we do, every word that we speak.
You know, Trez, Officer Cokerham, the other SAFE officers, my office, the city of San Antonio, we receive no shortage of calls from people demanding that we get tough, right? That we arrest people for being homeless, arrest them for, you know, loitering, arrest them for panhandling, arrest them for, you know, living in encampments. Trez, I've heard Chief McManus a number of times say, we're not going to arrest our way out of this problem, right? And there's nothing compassionate about arresting people. You don't solve anything. Have you seen that that approach, the tough hand approach, work anywhere?
That I can think of, absolutely not.
Okay.
And again, as you had shared, and as the sheriff had shared, there's no way that we can arrest away the problem. I've heard people say, hey, I don't care what you do with them, just get them out of here, pack them up on a train, put them on a bus and get them out of here.
Yeah.
But it doesn't address the core problems and the issues that still need to be addressed. Whatever bus, whatever train they get off of, they still have issues of poverty, of homelessness.
So
those things still have to be dealt with.
So you said, you know, that doesn't necessarily get to the core, you know, root cause issues of homelessness, right? And so Patrick, this one's, I'm gonna shoot it over at you. You've heard these requests the same way I have, right? We need to get tough. We need to crack down, right? We need to run them off. And the city of San Antonio under your watch has taken a totally different approach. So tell me about that approach. Tell me about how you guys are leveraging relationships with other stakeholders, and then tell me what kind of successes you guys are looking to achieve and whether or not you've achieved them.
Sure. So to add to what we were just talking about, I'll borrow a line from one of Trez's colleagues and paraphrase elegantly, but you know, if someone is on fire, you can't put them out when they're right in the heat source. And so, you know, when we're talking about moving folks along or arresting them, that gets them away from the heat source, but not in a way that's going to make them necessarily more receptive to, you know, to addressing their problems, to working through things with folks like Trez and our service providers. So we do have to folks away sometimes from what's happening, experiencing homelessness when those folks are like Officer Cokerham said, in the lowest moments of their lives. They've experienced trauma. Sometimes they need to get out of there, but we have to do that in a way that's compassionate and respectful of all that they've been through and where they're at that moment. It's a very difficult balance that I'm glad we have folks like Trez and the social workers to have. You'd asked about you know, kind of our strategies and where we're going. So we commissioned a homeless strategic plan a few years back, and that was presented to council in December of 2020. We incorporated some lessons learned. So throughout the pandemic, I think that unsheltered homelessness, folks out on the street, have become more visible throughout the pandemic. We don't have the data to say that there are more of them necessarily, but we can, I think, all agree that it has become more visible. We also received funding through the Federal CARES Act to respond to COVID in our. So all of that went into this homeless strategic plan. That is our 5-year plan. It's guiding the community. South Alamo Regional Alliance for the Homeless has adopted it as the community's plan. This is what we're all agreeing to work towards over the next 5 years.
Stop there for a second. You mentioned the South Alamo Alliance. Tell us what that is. Some folks have never heard of that. I'm learning more and more about how important an organization that is. How they come about? Who are they?
So every major community, every major metro area, or even smaller ones, have something continuum of care. The Housing and Urban Development Department, HUD, the federal HUD agency, actually requires this of communities, that this agency, sometimes it's a city department, sometimes it's a nonprofit, like in the case of Antonio, it's a independent nonprofit. Their job is to coordinate federal dollars and also those federal dollars. So how as a community are we going to work together? How are we going to prioritize people for housing, things like that? So Sarah does, they're like I said, an independent nonprofit, fairly small team. They don't provide direct service, but they're sort of behind the scenes, running the systems that make a lot of the work possible to be effective in housing people. So every community has one. Sarah is a great partner of the city of San Antonio. We work together every day practically with their team, and we sit on their board of directors. So strong relationship. That's what Sarah is, and they've adopted this strategic plan in partnership with the city. So there's a few things out of that we're pushing on for the next few years. We've already started, really. One is with street outreach, and so that's Trez, and so Trez is the District 8. He's your contact. He focuses on that geographic area and knows the folks that are living on the streets in that area to get them into housing. There's one of him in every city council district. That was part of the current year's city budget. We've also funded our agencies to increase their street outreach presence. Looking at low barrier shelters or low barrier options. Councilman, I know you're on KSAT recently talking about the hotel.
Yeah. So what does low barrier mean?
So low barrier means there are as few prerequisites or restrictions or rules around entering into a service as practical as possible. Now, the Haven for Hope has the courtyard. A lot of folks sleep there every night and have since it was opened. And it serves a purpose. It serves a lot of folks and helps a lot of folks every day. We added this low barrier option run by SAM Ministries because there are a few folks that it doesn't work for, that to be in a congregate setting, they have certain higher needs. It's a new option for our system as a low barrier, so you can be drunk to come in. You cannot use or bring substances into the facility, but if you are having a substance use disorder, that's not a barrier. That's not going to prevent you from accessing that service. The idea being you can get into that service and then improve from there. So the city contracted with Sam Ministry, this motel open downtown as a low barrier option. And it's not something that folks are going to stay in forever. The idea is that within a few months, they're into a housing program, and partners are already working on that to get them in and then back out into a housing program, into a stable situation. So that's a new thing that we've added this year. One other initiative, and this is in the strategic plan, and I think we'll be working more on, is permanent supportive housing. And this is something that San Antonio doesn't have much of and doesn't have in one location that other communities do and have had a lot of success with, is permanent supportive housing. So we'll look to potentially include that in the housing bond that will be in front of the voters next May.
Right.
And so that's something that we're looking forward to as a community of service providers as well.
Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that just joined us, we're speaking to 3 of our local subject matter experts on the topic of homelessness. Each one comes at the problem from a different angle. Officer Cokerham from the SAPD law enforcement angle, Trez Scipio from the on the streets engagement angle, and then Patrick helps the city with policy and funding and and programmatic design. We I do want to, tell you, we have we are getting questions, and I'm seeing these questions come in on Facebook. And we have a we were talking earlier about, some folks want us to attack the problem with a capital A attack, right? Which is roust them out of their encampments, kick them out, tell them don't come back, right? And Officer Cokerham and Trez, you and I have all been out to these encampments, and we've helped clean some of these up. First of all, let's make sure we start talking about what the law is and what the law isn't. So, Officer Cokerham, is panhandling illegal?
Yes, sir. It is a city ordinance, so you cannot panhandle, you cannot give to panhandlers. However, like you spoke of before, you can't arrest this problem away. As long as people are giving money to these individuals, they're going to be out there.
So when people call 911 and say, oh my gosh, I see a panhandler on De Zavala and I-10, come and get them, that obviously is dispatched, but what is the likelihood that you guys will drop everything you're doing to go and run off a panhandler versus answer the emergency, someone's going to die 911 calls, like domestic violence cases and assault cases, which you're constantly dealing with? Because I get the calls from my constituents saying, well, I called 911 and then they just didn't show up, right? Do you guys show up to every one of your calls?
Absolutely, sir. So in the same way that you're saying right now, we do have a prioritization. So a shooting is a higher priority than a panhandler because, as you know, there's a loss of life possibility against a panhandler. I'm sorry, it's a shooting versus the panhandler. Now, every call that comes in will be addressed. There will be an officer who goes through. Now, that is determinant if, say, it happens later and an officer gets there later and the panhandler has left, they can't address that at that time. So each one is handled specifically to that event, and it doesn't always have to be people calling in. So if an officer drives by, if he's not heading to a call, he or she can handle that and either issue a citation, tell them they can't be there, and handle that in the way they need to.
I've visited with a lot of your partners out there at SAFFE, and here's what they tell me, and you tell me if I'm wrong. When you arrest somebody or give them a citation, what is the likelihood that will dissuade them from ever panhandling at that corner again?
Oh, I can guarantee you every single person who's on a corner has been issued at least dozens of citations, because half of them I've personally given citations to on multiple occasions.
Right.
And
so they don't care. I mean, a citation is kind of meaningless if you have no home, if you have no money. I mean, what are they going to do? Right, give you the death penalty, and it's not like you're going to serve any jail time. I mean, you'll be there for a few hours, and then they'll give you time served because it's a very, very small misdemeanor. And so, and every time you guys have to arrest somebody or give a citation to a panhandler, what Chief McManus has told me is that that's time that was taken away from you guys responding to more serious calls. So I've seen in the past where there's panhandling going on and an officer may drive by and not arrest and not cite right there and then. How do you all explain away that, right? I mean, because constituents will tell me, I saw a police officer driving by and there was a panhandler and they didn't arrest them. Tell us what's going on in the officer's head when you all drive by and see a panhandler.
Absolutely. So again, we go to that prioritization. Many times these panhandlers are out on the busiest times of the day. So because there is the most traffic going in those intersections. So the most likelihood that they're going to get money and monetary gain through that. However, when you have the busiest time, oftentimes you have the busiest call load. So these officers many times are driving normally, but they're still heading to a call. They'll do what they can. I know a lot of our officers, I've spoken to them personally, they'll honk their horn, they'll tell them to leave. However, if they're going to a family violence call where there is a victim that needs someone there and they're not going code 3, they're not going lights and sirens, they still need to make that call because that victim matters. But they can't divert from that and address this right now because, again, we have that prioritization.
So, Trez, you're listening to this conversation about panhandling, and maybe I'm wrong, right? But is panhandling a symptom or is panhandling the problem? And if it is a symptom, what is it a symptom of?
Honestly, every situation is different, but panhandling is more of a symptom, again, of a deeper core issue. There's something going on with this person, something in their lives. For some that I've spoken to personally, some of them, they feel that they have no other choice. As Mr. Steck had mentioned earlier about low barriers, one of the largest barriers that we deal with are the lack or the loss of ID. As I told someone once before, if a person doesn't have some type of ID with a picture, if someone doesn't have a social security card, you can't get a bus ticket to go from here to, you can get from here to Houston. So running a person off, fussing at them because they're panhandling, for some, this is their livelihood.
Yeah.
Are some using the funds for food? Yes. Are some using it for shelter, to actually pay for a hotel? Yes. Are some using it for drugs or alcohol? Yes. Very much so. Just as many people have 9-to-5 jobs, and are they using their money for house payments? Yes. Are they using it for illicit drugs? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a person living their life the best way they know how. And in some instances, yes, it is panhandling.
How do you respond to the people, Trez, who say, look, the reason they're homeless is because, they just don't work hard enough, and they're not, they should pull themselves up from their bootstraps and go get a job, right? How do you respond to that?
Again, every situation, and even as you say that, I have 5 clients that automatically come to mind. With those 5 clients, I'm looking at mental illness as a factor. I'm looking at someone who lost their home because of some, I guess, shady dealings with their family. They were turned out in the street. So there are so many different situations, but honestly, I say some of the folk that are out panhandling, some of those folk that are sleeping under bridges, they're 26 years in the Navy. I served a good chunk of that time with the Marines, sleeping in the rain, sweating it out. And I tell you, some of those folk are more hardcore than I am. There's no way that I can say a person is lazy when they're willing to stand outside the heaviest part of the traffic day and stand out there with a sign hoping to get enough money to buy whatever they want to buy. That's hardcore.
Thank you, Trez. Now, Patrick, I said earlier that the questions I'm asking were actually questions developed out from receiving a lot of questions from our constituents. And so I got one from Patrick, who's here watching live. Patrick says, what are we doing to help those with mental health issues or drug addictions? Sort of from the city's policy point of view, right? I mean, we're looking at the entire city. What's the plan? What are we talking about in the budget for 2022? What kind of conversations are you having within the city about executing the plan?
Yeah, so it is common among people living on the streets that they have a substance use disorder, that they have mental health, either diagnosed or not, that needs to be treated. And when you're living in that crisis mode of sleeping on the street and sort of living day to day, it becomes very hard to treat that. So there are treatment options. There's the Center for Healthcare Services has a residential detox program that you need insurance for, and it's one of the most common referral places that our street outreach team will work to get folks to, is that detox facility for mental health. I mean, the SAPD actually works as a mental health unit with clinicians that are worked with CHCS as well to work on those mental health issues, diagnose, make a treatment plan, and then the mental health professionals in that system can follow up. And so we also make that referral to the mental health resources that are available in the community. It is very common. The city budget includes funding for CHCS and for those clinicians through SAPD that work with SAPD. There's a large conversation nationally, of course, about the role of policing. We had a study that's been presented now to council about the approaches to certain calls and things like that. So the budget works to address some of those issues. To start down that direction, we want to be deliberate and thoughtful in how we do it. We want to connect to the available resources that are already existing, like I mentioned, the Center for Healthcare Services and some others. So that's generally what we're doing.
Patrick, I have a friend of mine who's online right now. His name is Ernest Salinas, and Ernest and I spent a lot of time standing out in the sun during the last election cycles, and we became friends. And coincidentally, Ernest is the leader of the Delview neighborhood in District 1, right? And Delview neighborhood was something that you guys talked a lot about because there was one of my former colleagues had set up a homeless encampment in front of the neighborhood, and this neighborhood got really angry. And Ernest and I had spent some time talking about it, but he's got a good question here, which is, how do you know you're succeeding? And, what metrics have you set for yourself? Because if you're just throwing money at a problem and the problem doesn't seem to go away, then, how do we as policymakers go to the public and say, hey, we're going to continue doing something that hasn't necessarily worked? And so what goals are there out there? And then when do you say, it's not working, we're going to adjust?
Sure. So, well, the most immediate sort of headline number is that annual point in time count, where we literally just count on who's experiencing this. We didn't do the street count in February of 2021, but we will in 2022 here in a few months, and that will give us a sense of the direction that we're headed. Over the last been fairly flat. Which you could say is evidence that we're not working, or you could say it's evidence we are controlling the growth of a problem that other communities are seeing arise in unsheltered homelessness. Nationally, we are seeing a rise in those numbers, and we have managed in San Antonio to control it. And we, of course, see it trending downward. One other stat that I can point to progress on is every month we see who's on the wait list for homeless housing programs. And we can look at it by, were they in a shelter before, or were they on the street before they entered into this housing program? Since January, over the last 8 months, that proportion has shifted from about 75% coming from shelters or to the wait list, and now the wait list is about even between street and shelter. More folks from the street onto a housing wait list, and that is a success. That's an expanded street outreach team working with these folks, getting them into the system, connected with the system where they haven't been before, and in line for housing. And we're able to push through. And this is a SARA initiative of a housing surge, of using all of these federal resources to really push that wait list along a lot than we have in recent years. We're going to house 500 people in the last few months of this year using those federal resources that we have. So we have that success. We're developing other with SARA. So that's another one of the roles is data community, so that we can have a dashboard for the community to track progress quarterly. So we will have that soon.
So back to you, Trez. We got a great question from Tony, and he wants to know, what is it you guys do as far as transporting these folks, offering this transport? Where do you take them, and how do you handle the conversation when the person says, I don't want to go?
Well, again, one of the most important things is, again, meeting the person where they are. So again, under a bridge, under an overpass, in the field, on a street corner, and typically all of us, I would say all of us, myself and my colleagues, even the other street outreach teams, our first thing is to build a rapport. We establish who we are, and we acknowledge who that person is. Mm-hmm. In the social work field, we talk about dealing with the person, who they are, and acknowledging that. But simply put, as far as transportation, if a person is provided an opportunity for resources and they take us up on that offer and say, yes, I want to go to shelter I want to go to this shelter, but I really don't want to go to that shelter, or whatever the situation may be. We go ahead and offer that to them. At that time, we go ahead, we are, as outreach workers, we are provided a city van, which we utilize to transport clients to their destination. And again, that's working with Sam, with Cam, with Haven for Hope. That's maybe a trip to CHCS because they have an immediate medical need, or maybe they've just said, hey, you know what, I'm not quite ready for shelter, but I know that I have an issue. I want to go to detox. So all of these are options, and there's so many options because again, one situation or one placement does not work for every person. And again, it's important to realize that for many people, it may take 1, 5, 7, 10 times of reaching out to this person before they say, you know what, I think it is time.
Yeah, and I guess Officer Cokerham, that's the art of what Trez and you do out on the street, right? I mean, and that is establishing that trust quickly, because honestly, which one of us would respond to a total stranger coming up and saying, hey, want to ride? Usually you have to, have that human connection and then establish trust and then figure out, okay, this person is not here to hurt me. They're not here to rip me off. They're not here to sell me something I don't want, right? So Officer Cokerham, is it illegal to refuse those services? I mean, can you just say, fine, then I'm arresting you, let's go?
No, not at all. You can't force someone into something they don't want to be in. So many times, Trez, you said it perfectly. The rapport that you build is so astronomically important to have with these people, treating them well, treating them like humans each and every time you have an interaction with them.
Well, listen, I wanted to talk to you about a personal experience I had. And Officer Cokerham, you tell me whether or not this was smart or not, but during that freeze that we had back in February, I saw a man and a woman just trudging through the snow when nobody should have been out. And I was out delivering wood to my neighbors. And I stopped and I said, you guys look like you're freezing, get in here, right? And they jumped in the car and I said, let's go buy some coffee, right? And let's get you somewhere warm. And they told me their story. They said, look, we're from up north in the Midwest, and we decided to come to San Antonio. And this is about as far as we got. But we were here. We don't plan on leaving anytime soon. We left the north because of it was so cold up there, and here we are. But and I said, well, can I give you a ride to Haven for Hope? And they said, no, it really is not in our best interest because we use drugs, and we panhandle on days of Vala and I-10. And if we go to Haven for Hope, then how am I going to, that's just not going to work for us, right? Very, very honest, raw conversation. How many of these folks do you think are refusing services because they're in the grips of these horrible addictions?
Now, I can't speak to averages and things like that in our city, but I can talk about my personal interaction with these people. And I would say a prominent amount of them, because thankfully, because I work with a SAFE unit, I have the time to be able to have those conversations, similar to how you had a conversation. And throughout that time, throughout a lot of these, whether we're cleaning up a homeless camp, whether we're giving resources, that is the prominent sticking point where they don't feel like they can go on these resources, that they are in the grips of their narcotics. If we're cleaning out these homeless camps, we find the needles and the pipes and the drugs. And again, I wouldn't suggest the citizens to be giving homeless rides. Unfortunately, I deal with a lot of these individuals, and it can get dangerous at times, especially if they're in the middle of either they're coming down from a high or they're in the middle of a high. I am glad you had a good interaction, but a lot of times I wouldn't suggest for just anyone to give rides to people you don't know.
Yeah. Well, thankfully they were very sweet, and one of my friends who owns the convenience store saw that we needed help and gave us some coffee. But Patrick, I want to talk to you about this hotel. So much has been said about it on the news, and and now all over social media, and it's now become a thing of a rumor, and about rumor, right? Rumor becomes truth, and truth becomes legend. And I think there's so many people out there that don't really understand what it is that we're doing here. Can you walk us through this hotel plan?
Sure. So what it is, just factually, it's a Days Inn downtown Houston Street. About 40 rooms, motel style, opens to the outside, the parking lot. The city has leased it for 12, so that started in July. And Sam Ministries has a long history of serving this population in our community. They submitted a proposal to run it. We selected them and funded them to run it. So it's not operating as a Days Inn. There's the checkout is a very different process managed by Sam Ministries. And so it's a shelter, and using these hotel rooms for people who kind of mentioned earlier, they work well in any of the other shelter options like Haven for Hope or Salvation Army, which, like I said, also do serve hundreds of people every night. They do a great job for many people.
Yeah.
But for this select group, and we have, Sam Ministries has criteria of who they're going to take and try to do one of these other options first. But if this place is the right place for them, then they'll get in there, and they're getting their 3 meals a day. They have case managers working with them. So working on that housing plan, you're not going to stay here in this Days Inn forever. Let's get you somewhere housed permanently. So that's what it is. And it's 12 months. It's funded for 12 months. We used the CARES Act funding. And then we'll evaluate and see if it's a good part of our homeless system. How can we make it permanent? If it's something we need to change, let's change it.
So Valerie Salas right now on Facebook says, Sam Ministries Overcoming Homelessness is one of my favorite, most trusted partners I've ever worked with. Valerie, we're right with you. We love them very much. And also our friends at Christian Assistance Ministries, they are super, and we've partnered with them. So Patrick, on this hotel, and I'll tell you what my experience has been talking to folks online and sort of seeing some of these comments. I think when they saw we're gonna take down this hotel and acquire it and use it for about 12 months for sheltering, many of them in their head said, wait a second, like the Westin? You mean like La Cantera? Like, is it gonna be a fancy hotel? I mean, is there a pool? Can they, can we work out there? Is there a business center, a spa? And I asked that question during city council, and your boss and one of my heroes, Melody Woosley, said, I don't know what the star rating is on this thing, but I guarantee you it's not that high. Describe the building for us so that people really understand what it is that we've got here. Is it a luxury hotel?
No. It is. So there is a pool. It is drained. It is not being. There's a small pool, but it's not being pool. Yeah, it's 40 rooms. They open to a parking lot next to the expressway. It's a little warm in the asphalt during the day, but there, it's 4 walls and a roof and clean linens, clean bathroom, and shower. It is better than living on the street, I have to say. And so for folks who have been in that trauma and crisis of living on the street, it can take a lot to change the mindset of, in 4 walls and under a roof can be a big change. And so providing that in a controlled environment, someone checking in on them every day, several times a day, and asking them how they're doing, try to into the next thing. That's an important step.
So Trez, and my job is not just to give people good news, but it's also to, disabuse people of misconceptions. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this hotel is not a luxury property, and nobody goes there to have fun. We got some ARPA money, a historic investment on the part of the federal government in cities. with a real emphasis on helping the most vulnerable. We use that money as it was designed to be used on a whole bunch of different programs, mental health programs, homelessness, domestic violence programs, opioid addiction, digital divide addiction, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One of those projects was this hotel. And I think it really just inflamed a lot of people's passions because of the misconception that the word hotel brings about, right? Had we said, Trez, for example, if we'd said, hey, we found a building and we're going to use it as a temporary shelter for folks so that people can actually have a safe place to sleep at night while we wrap our arms around them and offer a whole bunch of services so that we can get them off the street, working into mental health programs, et cetera. I don't think a lot of people would have had too much of an objection, but then they heard hotel and that kind of got them, thinking about other things. But Trez, I think the point here is that we're not just trying to get people, off the street and then just saying we're done, right? I mean, this is a work in progress. These wraparound services, I think, are the key to solving this. And so how many Trez Scipios are there in San Antonio? I mean, are you the only one, or do the other districts enjoy, angels like you doing this hard work? How many all hands on decks folks do we have out there?
Wow. Honestly, I know for DHS, we have a team, which is, there's 8 of us currently. I believe there are a couple more that are being brought in probably by the end of the month is what I've heard. And that's just the outreach team. We also have the abatement team, which they go out, they take a look at certain areas. And when the conversation comes up about moving out, their first mission is outreach. So many people, when I come up on a scene of encampments, they say, yeah, I've already spoken to Joe and, he's a great guy. And, and this is what I've worked out. But then there's also, as you said before, there's CAM, there's SAM Ministry. Haven's been doing this for years. I remember one client in particular who told me out there at Days of Alo, out in front of Walmart, and she said, yeah, I remember some guy came by and talked to me, and he talked to me about Haven. Maybe I think I'll go this time. As soon as I pull up to Haven, here comes Pete, and he says, wait a minute, don't I know you? And she's like, hey, that's the guy that talked to me under the tree a year ago, 2 years ago. So there are many of us. Then there's also, and that's not even counting some of the independent, churches who are also reaching out and just providing services. There's street medicine, Yanawana. There's many organizations are working together in partnership to address these issues in areas of people experiencing homelessness.
I think it's worthwhile to remind folks that this initiative to bring onto the team folks like Trez and with their experience in every single district throughout San Antonio was an initiative funded through last year's budget, right? And this is something that for the first time ever we're experimenting with, and we're seeing some pretty good successes here in creating those trust relationships. And so, we are having these conversations right now about how to fund things going in the future to layer, solutions on top of solutions. And so, Officer Cokerham, one of the things I want you to know is that we are adding with this budget an additional 12 SAFE officers to provide more boots on the ground so that you guys can have these interactions. And I think it's important, again, because there's a lot of folks who joined us midstream during this presentation. Tell us why the SAFE program is different than just your regular patrol officer, who we all love as well. But what is it about SAFE that's different, right? And how is your mission different? And then, if I were to add more officers to, let's say, District 8 SAFE division, what does that allow you to do?
Thank you, sir. I apologize. We're still a working substation, so I had to replace this. As a SAFE unit, so we're still patrol officers. However, we are separate from a call load. So when people call in, we have the ability to choose which calls. So say if there is a homeless individual we know lives in an area and it's in our area of responsibility, I have the ability to assign myself to that call. Since we talked about rapport earlier, I have a rapport with them and I can make that scene, build that relationship. I have a little bit more time than an officer who looks at his screen and sees 5 more calls that he has to go to at the end of that. And then in addition, SAFE, for those who don't know, it stands for San Antonio Fear-Free Environment.
Mhm.
So a lot of our differences with patrol, we are still officers, we're still needed, but we have time to make meetings. So if that's an HOA meeting, if that is with our businesses, if they have concerns or complaints about specific things, and I understand we're talking about homeless. So if they have concerns about camps in their area, if they have concerns of excess panhandling that they're seeing at intersections that they live in, they can talk to us, our supervisors, they can get a hold of their SAFE officer. We have one for every district that an officer is involved in. And with that, with these areas of expertise, we build those relationships that a patrol officer who has days off, who has call after call after call, who might be going outside of his service area just to handle calls that are stacking up, isn't able to give that time that we're able to invest over the normal time that's allotted.
You know, ladies and gentlemen, I love talking to my SAFE officers. They undergo a additional training, and they are community mediators in many ways, and they're community problem solvers. And through the SAFE program, we as a community have given them the tools to solve problems, old problems, in new, innovative ways. And I see you guys out there every single day, and you, like, to me, your number one function seems to be creating the relationship with the neighbors, with the small businesses, with the folks on the streets. And ladies and gentlemen, I do want to let you know, we work with SAFE so often, almost every day. And I'm going to ask my staff to go ahead and post for us on Facebook the contact information for your local SAPD SAFE unit. Also, we're going to provide you a website where you can contact us and some other additional contact information, so that you can always get in touch with SAFE directly. And to get in, officer, to get in touch with SAFE, you don't have to call 911, right? I mean, the idea here is to call you guys before emergencies happen, right?
Absolutely. So as you brought up earlier, we are that personal contact. I know years and years ago, you would see the officer walking down the street, and you would get to know him. You have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
You would know the person who, in some words, had a beat in your area. So with that, we're trying to, for many years, bring back that one-on-one conversation, that one-on-one interaction. So it's not just an officer in a very large city coming to your aid. If you have a neighbor disturbance, if you have something that is a rising concern in your area, you can contact your personal SAFE officer so that you can know that they're going to go above and beyond in every situation, that they care about their community as much as you care about your community. Yeah. And honestly, since we are such a small unit, we're able to be handpicked for that, because we need a certain set of characters, a certain set of ideals. And we honestly have to care about our community as much as those who live in it do.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's enlightening. I want to change gears a little bit, well, with the remaining time we have. And Patrick and Trez, I'm going to direct this at you. Trez first, domestic violence, right? Our local battered women and children shelter gets about 15,000 women and children coming through the program every year. If you're staying at the women and children shelter because you're a domestic violence victim, then you're by definition homeless. If you're not in your house, you're homeless. And that's an important shelter too. Trez, how do you see the domestic violence crisis connected to the homelessness problem that we're facing here in San Antonio? And what kind of conversations do you have with people out on the street?
Well, as a matter of fact, you mentioned the battered women's shelter. I actually had a client today. Actually, she was directed by another city worker, and she mentioned a young lady who had been abused and thrown out by her family. One of the resources that we were able to point her in the direction of was the battered women's shelter. And I let her know that again, there are many resources, there are many options. She felt uncomfortable at that moment dealing with the battered women's shelter. But again, there's so many resources. There's a wealth of resources and opportunities in our city that for every situation, there's always an answer, there's always an option.
Now, from a more macro level, Patrick, how is it that you guys look at this problem through the domestic violence lens, and what's being done in that area?
Yeah, so it is a pretty significant cause of homelessness, and it's not just women fleeing bad situations. That's a large proportion, but it can, you think about becoming homeless, it's a breakdown of all of your safety networks, right? Some people become homeless because they lost a job. Cases, something is happening in their home with their family that they can't stay there anymore. So it could be violence, or it could just be a disagreement. Whatever it is that's such a significant cause. Some people don't always think about. From the city's level, it's like I mentioned, it's another one of those proposals in the budget is to pilot in the central substation area this domestic response, and this is with the Metro Department, to have clinicians and folks who are trained specifically in the social work aspect of responding to domestic violence go out with law enforcement and with EMS when it's appropriate to be on the scene, and that there's immediate, those crucial moments that it's most important to respond to and so this central substation area that this budget's going to do this year, this upcoming fiscal year, will bring that new approach to those kinds of calls. If we can stabilize someone, if you get them to the right resource, that has a better chance of keeping them from experiencing homelessness on the streets.
So we're going to end with one more question for Officer Cokerham. It's going to be about domestic violence, officer. And but before we do that, I am going to request my staff to please go ahead and post contact information for the Battered Women and Children Shelter and the National Domestic Violence Hotline, so that we can make sure that everybody has information. If you know somebody out there who's in need of options and in need of help, certainly call 911 in the case of an emergency. But there's some really great resources out there for women, children, and men, who need this help. Officer Cokerham, before I ask you the question, I want you to know that there's a woman online named Valerie, and she says, as an outreach worker, I can't express how grateful I am to the officers on the SAPD bike patrol downtown and SAFFE officers who try to help this population. The calls I get are life-changing at times for them. They see the opportunities to get someone the help they need before trying to arrest the issue away. I've seen much success with their connections with our team out there. Very grateful for these units. I see all the compassion. And so anyway, I get praise like this in my inbox all the time about you guys. Nobody ever praises me, by the way. They love you guys. Here's the question. Right now, there's a conversation around responding to domestic violence calls and mental health calls, and putting this outreach team together, right? Social workers and other experts and law enforcement together to go out as a group to respond to some of these 911 calls. I worry that if we don't send, and the conversation is, let's not send police officers with these teams. Let's just let these teams answer the 911 calls on their own. And then there's the other argument that's like, are you crazy? And like, what if these things turn deadly and dangerous? So when you answer 911 calls, do you know whether they're dangerous or not before you get there? How do you triage that call?
Thank you, sir. This is a very deep, near and dear topic to my heart. I'm very passionate about it. The former unit that I was on before SAFE was actually our family violence unit, out of the Peru substation, the crisis response team. Now, a lot of these, it's easy for people to see that it's just a couple having an argument. They're not getting along. However, many times we see this, and I was actually watching some body cam just the other day of the escalation of violence that occurs. The oftentimes where officers get to a scene where they are addressing whether the suspect or the victim, and it becomes on times deadly, it becomes aggravated. It is a very dangerous situation, and you can't know how that's going to be every time you get to a scene. You can't know at times, even if a suspect is there or not, just because of the way that we receive calls. You have a 911 call, they're shouting in the background, you're getting little information. So when an officer gets there, they might have a location, they might have someone needing help, maybe it's a neighbor calling in, but there's no way to know the level of danger that occurs at each one of these calls.
You know, what breaks my heart is that we only have an hour to talk about something that, you know, we could probably give a year-long symposium on, and really still not scratch the surface of how to solve this. I appreciate you guys so much, and I promised you at the beginning of this that the hour would fly by, and I feel like it has. And it flies by when you're having really good conversation. And so what I usually do at the end of these things is I give the opportunity to each one of my speakers to give us their closing argument. If anybody's going to remember something about what you said today, or if you want them to walk away just with a thought, what would that be? And I'm going to start with Trez and then Patrick and the officer. Go ahead, Trez. What's your closing argument?
Thank you, Councilman. My closing argument would simply be this. You don't have to be a social worker to have a heart of compassion. And working in D8, I see a lot of compassion, both from citizens, business owners, everyone I've dealt with. I don't hear the, hey, get these guys, run them out of here. This is horrible. What are you doing? Do more. I hear a lot of, what can I do? What more can be done? Is there anything else that I can do to be able to help with this situation? So I applaud the neighbors, the constituents, the clients. I applaud you all. Those of you who have that heart of compassion, keep doing that. Please reach out to us, reach out to the city, reach out to the outreach team, to the SAFE officers, reach out to the district office, and keep letting us know and alerting us to some of these potential issues before they become a crisis. I will put in a plug for the 311 line and also the homeless hotline, and also SA Gives, which I know, Councilman, you have a personal interest in. These are all ways of reaching out and honestly touching the lives of people left and right. These are our neighbors. We are all neighbors. And so it's important that we all have that opportunity to reach out and touch others. Thank you.
Patrick, closing arguments. What do you want folks to know and think about going forward?
Well, yeah, thank you. And this hour did fly by. What Trez probably said it better than I could, but these are our neighbors. These are human beings. If you see someone on the street, you may feel uncomfortable. You may have sort of a range of things that you might feel in a reaction. They're people. They're experiencing a crisis that is ongoing for them. The circumstances that brought them there are different for each and every one of them, but they are people and who are living with a trauma of being on the street and living like that. So that's what I want to always communicate to the residents who see this and capture that compassion, that goodwill that we have in abundance in San Antonio. We have all these organizations, we've mentioned many on the call, donate, get involved. They're accepting volunteers, many of them now, or as we ease out of the pandemic, we hope, spend some time, spend a few dollars, and try to help out these organizations that are doing that work.
Thank you. Officer Cokerham, closing arguments.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, sir. It's been a privilege and an honor to be here.
Thank you to the three of you.
If I were to say anything, I'm very lucky to be a part of a police department that reflects the diversity of our great city. Now, with that diversity, we have issues in amongst itself in this city, including one, which is homelessness. With that, I would suggest that this is a socioeconomic issue. It is something that the police department alone cannot deal with. The specific organizations cannot deal with by themselves. This is going to be a community project that we all have to take on. So as a community member, I would suggest, rather than giving money to them, which many times does go towards their addictions, towards their specific issues, giving to the organizations that are out there giving resources, that are giving these life-saving and life-changing opportunities to these people. So the SA gives, the locations that allow these people to have the housing resources, to having the food, the opportunities to find jobs and their IDs, those are going to be the best long-term help for these people, rather than just a few dollars here that will go towards their next fix. We have a compassionate and a loving community, and I love that, and I love serving them. So hopefully we can use that in a positive way.
All right, thank you. I love it. So here's my closing arguments. Both of you, Trez, you mentioned SA Gives, and Officer Cokerham, you mentioned, giving to organizations. One of the things we did 2 years ago is we created the SA Gives program. And what we've been asking folks is, if you see somebody out on the corner, right, panhandling, please think about where that money may end up, right? That money, in all likelihood, will end up buying drugs for something, and buying drugs. There's also a chance it'll end up buying food and a hotel room for the night, like Trez said. But we've seen it time and time again. Whenever we go to these encampments, especially these panhandling hotspots, there's hypodermic needles and evidence of drug use all over the place. And so what we've been asking folks is, if you do feel compelled to be generous, thank you for being generous. And we love you, San Antonio. But this problem of a drug addiction is something that we own, and we may be enabling it by rolling down our window and giving pennies and nickels and dimes and dollars out to panhandlers. And our request is that, instead of doing that, keep your window up and text to the number 41444 the word SA Gives, no space, just SA Gives. And instantly, in under 30 seconds, you can make the same donation, 25 cents, $1, in $1 million, $1 trillion if you want to be that generous. But you can give that to our nonprofit here in San Antonio, Sarah, who is an independent agency, and it's run by all the other agencies together. And it is the agency is an aggregator, and we've seen some success here. But every single time you roll down that window, there's a really high chance that money is going to end up exactly where you don't want it to end up. So that's number one. Number two, I see, I've been monitoring our online comments, right? And something broke my heart just now that passed through. And I gotta tell y'all, there's a lady named Cindy who says, hey, this conversation really didn't give me hope, right? And I didn't hear that, we're solving this, right? And Cindy, to that, I'll say, this may get worse before it gets better, right? A lot of this is also tied to an economic crisis that is sweeping the nation. A lot of this is due to folks that just got crushed in the COVID pandemic. And a lot of this is, chickens coming home to roost eventually, after just a lot of failed efforts by governments all over the country, to try to solve this. But Cindy, I have hope. I have hope because, as you heard each and every one of these speakers say, that for the first time in the history of the city, this is an all hands on deck, multidisciplinary, coordinated effort. We've never tried this before. We've never tried to get every stakeholder around the table to have the exact same conversations. And we've never really sat down and said, all right, guys, let's break it and then rebuild it, right? And this time, let's get it right, informed by data and informed by compassion. That's the first time ever, and I'm hopeful. And but Cindy, if you want to talk about it some more, happy to talk about it. I also got to thank my friends online who have been, clearly enjoying this conversation. They're being so, vigorous on their back and forth, and we're seeing debates actually happening while the four of us are here talking. The debates have been unfolding online, and just a few people, to my team out there monitoring this and putting the information out. Thank you so much, team. Please do me a favor and one more time post how it is that you can get a hold of SAFFE, how you can get a hold of me, how you can get a hold of Trez, and how you can get a hold of our domestic violence partners. Also, thanking some particular folks. Ty Grant, thanks for keeping the trolls in line. I appreciate you very much. Ernest Salinas, thank you for being here and listening. Cindy, thank you. Valerie, thank you for participating. And thank you also to Mr. Bernal. I saw you. Thank you so much. To all the neighbors who have submitted questions ahead of time, thank you. And so here's the way that you can thank the folks who participated today. And it's a really simple way. Whenever you see something called SA Speak, or we send out community surveys because we need to hear you. The folks on this call, our panelists, they really depend on you to give us information and reactions and suggestions. And so if you've got any, send it my way. I want to hear suggestions, ideas, complaints, compliments. We need all that information, because then we all meet together as a team, and this entire organization, the City of San Antonio, then uses your wants, needs, suggestions, priorities to inform our decisions, along with a lot of other data. And so you're part of owning this problem as well, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a pleasure. I'm frustrated that it's always too short, a time that we get to spend to each other. But again, I really do. I love my San Antonio. So I'm going to read, and this is it. I'm going to hang up on y'all as soon as I'm done reading this, okay? This is a book that I write quotes that I really like. And here's one that I pulled out from Hebrews 13:1. Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels without realizing it. Y'all like that? Isn't that wonderful? Anyway, folks, love you. Thanks so much to my panelists. Go have a good day. Go solve big problems. Bye, guys.